Hello, I'm Tom Harmer, your town manager. Thank you for joining me for this edition of Talk of the Town. Today I'm here in the village off of Broadway Street, and we're going to be talking about probably the biggest project in the town, and that's the undergrounding. It's a multi-year project. It's been well underway, and today we're going to provide you an update of what's going on with the project. Joining me today is Isaac Brauman, our Public Works Director. How are you, Isaac?
Good. How are you, Tom?
Very good. Great to see you out here. Just happened to come across you on Broadway.
Thank you.
The public, I think, knows about this project. It goes back to, from a construction standpoint, to, I think, the summer of 2019. So now we're here about 3.5 years later. I wanted to hear a little bit from you so we can share with our viewers what's going on with the project at this stage.
Sure. Thank you, Tom. This project itself is a 4-phase project. The island is 10 miles long, so we broke it up into 4 phases in coordination with FPL. We're standing in phase 2, which is the largest phase. It's on the north end. Phase 1 at the extreme south end is complete, and we're finishing up phases 2, 3, and 4. Basically, almost all of the underground infrastructure is in place. We're now going through what's called the switch order process to be able to energize these last phases. Phase 2 will be next. In fact, we're already energizing some feeder lines as we speak. And then phase 3 will follow, and then phase 4 will be the last phase. And we're hopeful that all the energizing will be done in the spring of 23.
And you mentioned phase 1, which is on the very south end of the island, kind of the Country Club Shores area. It's a great place for the public to go if they haven't driven through there and see what the difference looks like after the undergrounding is done.
That's right. That phase is entirely complete, energized, and FPL has removed the poles and wires from the area. Of course, as you know, that's the last thing that has to happen, is the poles to be removed from the area. That area is a very good example of what it'll look like at the end.
And I think we know this, but it might be helpful for the public. There's portions of the project that the town is doing, and there's portions that Florida Power and Light's doing.
Sure. We're doing all the electrical undergrounding and putting in the infrastructure, and FPL is helping us coordinate the switch orders. They provide the materials, and they provide a rebate to the town because we're doing the project ourselves.
And then once we do all the conversions of individual buildings and homes, FP&L then comes back and deals with the wires, the aerial wires, and the poles.
Absolutely. It is their crews, it is their contractor that comes in and removes all that material. Our contractor has nothing to do with the pole removal.
And I don't know if our viewers can see it, but if you look behind us and you see all the poles on Broadway, that all goes away, right?
Absolutely. All these poles, wires, every line that you see up in the air comes down and no longer exists. So it'll be a much different scene when this is complete.
Yeah, I think it'll be a dramatic difference, as we were talking about earlier.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is a good example to see all the wires that are, and it's not just power, but we also have in places around the island cable. You know, whether it's Comcast, Frontier has some aerial devices that are also part of the undergrounding.
That's exactly right. A lot of the FPL poles also lease space to Comcast and Frontier, are the 2 primary providers on the island that are also on the poles. So as part of this project, the town has had to coordinate with both Comcast and Frontier to remove their lines from the poles, and our contractor has been helping install some of that infrastructure, and then the providers themselves do a portion of that work as well and install their own fiber optic materials underground. So all the electrical and Comcast and Frontier are being undergrounded with this project.
Yeah, good point. And we think a lot about the individual homes being converted, but we're also replacing all the street lights on the island.
That's right. Where there's existing public street lights on the island that are currently fed by overhead lines, that's where we're going to be replacing those street lights with our own street light system.
Yes. And most of those street lights are in already, but maybe there's some final installations that need to occur?
That's right. There are installations that will need to occur where there's existing power lines and active energized lines. We cannot put those street lights in until those lines are de-energized and those poles are removed. So there will be a little bit of work at the very end after FPL removes all the poles and wires. We'll come back and put those street light poles in. It's not many, but there are enough that we'll have to come back and do that work after the pole removals occur. By then, though, everything should be energized in each of those phases where we'll be doing that work.
And you use the term switch order process, and let me give you my layman understanding, so
Certainly.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but as Wilco, our contractor, completes the undergrounding, they've done the boring and they put in the conduit and the wires are being run, FP&L authorizes us to energize the transformers, and that happens incrementally. And then once they do that, then that allows our contractor to go and actually do conversions on individual properties.
That's absolutely right, Tom. Because this is an FPL infrastructure project, it's ultimately it's their system, it's their infrastructure, and providing electrical service to any commercial or residential facility takes a lot of coordination and effort and due care. So we install the underground infrastructure. It's got to be tested, it's got to be verified, it's got to be numbered properly. And then once FPL does all that verification work, they authorize our contractor to begin energizing. There's a lot of effort that happens on the switch order coordination piece, and it's only FPL that can authorize that to begin. And like I said earlier, we have started energizing the feeders in phase 2. So FPL does it on a priority basis. They authorize on a priority basis. The feeders first, then what's called primaries, which lead to the transformers, and then the service connections to the homes. And that's the order we'll be progressing. That's why they're called switch orders. They go in a specific order, and then we'll begin doing the energizing to the homes in that order. What our contractor is going to be doing, once we've energized the feeders and primaries, they make the final connection to the meter box at the home, and then there's a switch and a transfer to the underground system.
So that happens almost home by home.
It happens home by home. Now the authorizations occur in groups and areas, but the actual energizing happens home by home.
And the viewers may not realize that, our residents, that we have to go with our contractor to every single house on the island and make that conversion from where it was being fed by an aerial wire, and now it's being fed underground, and that is an individual switchover at that home.
That is exactly correct. It's individual, it takes time, it takes a lot of coordination and due care, but that is how it happens.
And we've talked almost 3.5 years ago that this was about a 3.5-year project. And so here we are in December of 2022. We're almost to the 3.5-year mark.
Yes.
And we've said substantially complete.
Yes.
We'll let the trucks go by.
Yes.
We've talked about substantially complete. Can you kind of describe where you think we'll be by the end of December, and how that kind of meets what we think our goal is of being substantially complete?
Absolutely. Let me just back up a step real quick. When we started talking to experts in the field about a project of this magnitude and size, we were being advised that this is more like a 5 to 7 year project. At the time, the leadership of the town said, well, can we do this in 3.5 years, including the town commission? They said 5 to 7 years is too long. And the team said, well, let's see if we can target 3.5 years, and let's do this as a design, build, delivery, which is a little bit of a different type of delivery method. And we believe we're on track to hit 3.5 years with substantial completion, which simply means all the undergrounding infrastructure that can possibly be installed is in place to proceed through the switch order and energizing process. Would we have liked to have been energized by now? Of course. But as you know, FPL is a first responder in any storm event. In the last 3.5 years throughout Florida, we've had multiple storms. And any storm that occurs, FPL diverts resources to that, and rightfully so. And it puts a little bit of an impact or delay to our project. And I'm not suggesting it's all FPL, but I'm suggesting that there are impacts to the project that are outside of our control a bit. And our contractor, being an FPL certified contractor, also gets diverted to those storm areas. And then we bring them back here to continue the work. So we believe the project so far has been very successful. We're on track in 3.5 years to have all the underground infrastructure in place. We have a little bit of a supply chain issue with a few items in phase 4. We believe we'll overcome that in the month of December.
Well, and we haven't talked about budget, but I think it's worth mentioning. We do report quarterly to the town commission in a public meeting on the status of the project. And one of the things we talk about budget, and there's a couple things related to budget. One, we have contingency built in as we look at both the GMD portion of the project and the neighborhoods. And we've stayed away from generally using that contingency, which is, I think, a couple $1 million overall when you add them together.
Yes.
And then even beyond that, we are several $1 million. I think the last number is probably $3 to $4 million under budget. Still work to be done, still some potential unknowns, but we're generally on track with schedule and we're under budget.
Yes, Tom, we're very pleased with where we stand with the budget right now. We have been aggressively working with our contractor, who's also been working very cooperatively with us to save money on this job. And you're exactly right. We do expect it to come under budget. We do need to finish the job first, but we're very optimistic as to where we stand right now. We're very pleased with the contractor that the town selected, and the work is going very well, very successful for this type of project.
Very good. One more question before we move on to another topic, but the street lights.
Yes.
And we have one here. The viewers may not be able to see it right next to us, but those street lights, how many of them are we installing? What's our approach to installing street lights in the neighborhoods?
So, Tom, I don't have an exact number. We're installing streetlights throughout all the neighborhoods of the town that already have a public streetlight on an FPL pole and along Gulf of Mexico Drive. The ones on Gulf of Mexico Drive are defined by FDOT as to where we can put those and how many. And the ones in the neighborhoods are occurring generally in like-for-like locations. So, for example, if there's a streetlight pole, an existing FPL pole with a streetlight like the one behind us, we're generally going to put a streetlight pole in the same vicinity, whether on the same side of the road, the opposite side of the road, but at the same general location. So it's a like-for-like installation. We're not adding, it's not a new streetlight program. We're not adding streetlights throughout the island where they didn't exist. We're simply replacing them generally where they were.
Yeah. So on Broadway here, you see a lot of poles and a lot of overhead wires. Many of those poles don't have lights on them. There's only, say, 3 or 4 in this entire street that have lights.
Correct.
Once we're done, all of that will be gone, and then the new light poles will be in place, but there'll only be the same number of light poles. So there may only be 3 or 4 of these light poles on this entire segment.
That's absolutely right.
Okay.
And I think 3 to 4 is about exactly what will be on Broadway Street.
Okay, I just want to kind of clarify that for expectations.
Yes.
The other thing that's kind of going on that's not tied directly to the undergrounding, but it's related to cell phone coverage. And we know we've had multiple conversations internally and with the commission, a commission priority to enhance cell coverage, especially on the north end.
Yes.
We've met with the major providers. Verizon stepped up as the first one. They are in the process of hopefully energizing soon their new small cell poles. Can you just mention what their plans are?
Sure, no problem, Tom. And just to reiterate what you said, the town commission put a challenge on us, on the project team, to see if we can work concurrently with this project to enhance cell phone coverage on the island, which we know has been a bit of a challenge for quite a while. We met with the 3 big providers, T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T. And Verizon and AT&T at this point have been the most responsive, with Verizon really stepping out in front and accelerating plans to enhance coverage on the island. And what they chose to do was install 9 new small cell poles. These are not to be confused with the large cell phone towers. These are not towers at all. These are about 25 to 35 foot high small cell poles strategically placed on the island to enhance the worst areas of their coverage. They're in the process of that right now. There's even one on this road on Broadway Street near the Mar Vista restaurant, and there's 8 more throughout the island. They're working right now with their contractor and on a side job with our contractor that doesn't impact our budget or our schedule to activate those poles as soon as possible.
Very good. And there was a lot of discussion when they came in and made their request to actually have their plans approved because there was concerns about what they might look like.
Correct.
Now, I know we haven't had much complaints since they've been installed. They're really small cells, and the ones in the neighborhoods are limited to 25 feet, and the ones on GMD are limited to 35 feet, and they're black, and they're supposed to blend well with our existing new poles that we're putting in.
That's right. That's exactly right. Our town code is written such that when there's new small cell poles installed, they need to be consistent with the infrastructure we're installing, like our streetlight poles, which are also black, which are limited in height to 25 feet in neighborhoods, 35 feet on Gulf of Mexico Drive, and they're meeting all those specifications and standards. So they really do blend in well. They're not obtrusive, and they're not overly tall, which was a prohibition in the town code.
So it is exciting that in the near term we should start to see some enhanced, at least through the Verizon provider, enhanced coverage on the island. That helps with public safety. Our police and fire right now use Verizon as their primary data provider. And if a resident needs to call 911 or is operating a business off of using their cell, other connectivity like that, they should start to see that improvement pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Whether they're a Verizon customer now or in the future, Verizon is one that has stepped up to the plate to enhance coverage on the island.
And you mentioned AT&T, so there are conversations with them as well.
Yes, so in the case of AT&T, they're interested in potentially leasing some space on our new streetlight poles. So we're actually negotiating a lease as we speak for them to use some of our new infrastructure that we're putting in place to possibly place their antennas on our streetlight poles and their network gear on some of our poles as well. Probably a similar number, 9 to 12 is what they're talking about. So those negotiations are in progress.
Good, good. I know our residents will appreciate whatever provider
Yes.
they have, seeing some enhanced coverage on the island. That's for sure. Here it is in 2022, 2023. We'd like to be able to have good connectivity with our mobile devices.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So one last comment, and if you have any information, in addition to all the electric being undergrounding, we are putting conduit in the ground for fiber. And the initial effort with that conduit is going to be to connect all of our town infrastructure so that we have that good connectivity from a technology standpoint. And then it also provides a backbone later for other opportunities with smart city kind of stuff.
That's exactly right. We've installed 2 conduits along Gulf of Mexico Drive. The town has opportunities to potentially partner with some provider in the future, and really we don't know how technology is going to develop too far into the future. It just provides an option for other providers to come in, or the town to partner with somebody to utilize space in those conduits and not have to dig up the island all over again for whatever might be coming in the future. And the town is going to be open to to reviewing those opportunities.
And as it relates to that, our poles for our streetlights were designed with the thought that they could accommodate some type of smart device at the top, and that we have conduit for fiber in the area where all the poles are.
That's exactly right. The streetlight poles that we selected, both for the neighborhoods and for Gulf of Mexico Drive, were designed to be hollow inside, where you can run fiber optic cable or other technology into the pole itself, all the way to the top of the pole if you wanted to install antennas or other devices that are smart city type devices.
All right, very good. Well, lots of information to share.
Yes.
I think exciting phase of the project.
Absolutely.
I think over the next 3 to 6 months, as we complete our work and as FP&L starts to remove some of the existing infrastructure, everyone will really start to see that big difference on the island. And then we just recently went through the threat of Hurricane Ian, and we know, we've heard from FP&L how much more resilient the undergrounding is in Florida when you do this.
That's right. Both Hurricane Ian and Nicole, they've made the same or similar comments that anywhere that they had underground infrastructure, it was much more resilient and much quicker to reactivate than the overhead line areas.
Yeah, and I know I've heard in one of their presentations 5 times more resilient. So
after Hurricane Ian, they said they were 5 times faster being able to restore those areas.
Yeah, so that's good news on the island here. Obviously, when we're on a barrier island in Southwest Florida, susceptible to tropical storms.
Absolutely, it is great news.
Yes. Well, good. Well, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for sharing all this information with our viewers, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Talk of the Town.
Thank you, Tom.